Welcome to another great episode of the All Around. I am your gracious host, Dr. Anthony. So, it will be myself and my producer, Mark, tonight. We will discuss a variety of topics. Ida B was not able to make it today, and she will join us on next Monday, and possibly we'll have a guest or a panelist show. We haven't decided where we want to go with it yet, but without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring out producer Mark Lee.
Well,
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing? I
I'm
saw
good.
something in the news that I just know you're going to be fascinated by because apparently this crazy president of ours, or former president, has said that he wants the Constitution rolled back and for folks to reinstate him as president because he didn't have anything better to do. So he tweeted that on his own social media. I think it's Truth Social or something like that is what he's got. And that came up over the weekend. And he actually said that he wants to roll back the Constitution and have everybody reinstate him as president. I thought he was running for president for a second time or a third time, but apparently he wants us to renege on the promise that we made to the folks when we voted him out of office and actually vote him back in office or reinstate him or some other craziness that he said. So I'm trying to figure out what rock or what acorn fell on his head and got him all very confused to think that this is actually going to work and that people are going to want to do this. But that's apparently something he put out in his own social media. So I guess if you have your own social media, you can say whatever you want to.
Well, he has, even if he doesn't have his own social media, he has been doing that anyway because he's been tweeting and saying whatever the hell he wants since he was elected in office when they finagled Hillary Clinton out of her term and put him in or whatever. So nothing surprised me when it comes to him and what he says and what he's spewing. I mean, that's just the latest of how he doesn't understand the Constitution and how he doesn't understand the law of the land, where he's saying all of this craziness and trying to get people to back him up on continuing with the insurrectionists and continuing to break laws and to try to get him put back in office. His time is done. And I think once they finish with the trials with the insurrectionists, that he will not be able to run for office again. And it should be that way anyway, because he's a danger to not only to us, but to the Constitution and to democracy within itself. So, we can't allow someone like that, a demagogue, a misogynist, a sexist or whatever, back into office. And that goes to show you how, when we talked about, white women, how they supported this president, this ex-president and what he did when they had the opportunity to, vote a different way, and they did not, and they supported this man. So it just goes to show you the mindset of how they want to keep that white supremacy and the privilege of white supremacy intact and in play.
No, I definitely hear you on that. But, there's another person that's wanting to run for office. I'm still not convinced why he wants to run for office, except for maybe he wants to be a puppet or something like that, because we do know we have those Georgia runoffs going on between Reverend Warnock and Herschel Walker. And I know that Herschel Walker has even said that Obama did not tell the whole story when the former president joked about the GOP Senate candidate's interest in werewolves and vampires. So apparently he has an interest in werewolves and vampires, and he thought that Obama made a wrong joke about that and all in that space. And apparently he also went on a tangent about the mythical creatures during the speech and all of that. So what he's expecting to do in the Senate around the werewolves and the other kind of critters that are out there, your guess is as good as mine. And apparently what Obama said was, since the last time I was here, Mr. Walker has been talking about issues that are of great importance to the people of Georgia, like whether it's better to be a vampire or a werewolf. Obama joked as the audience laughed. This is a debate that I must confess I once had myself when I was 7. Then I grew up. So that's what he was saying. And apparently Herschel is trying to defend what he said and all in that story. And apparently one of his exes is saying that he was also very abusive as well, meaning that Walker was abusive. But I'm wondering, do we need to be paying attention to vampires and werewolves, which apparently is something that Mr. Walker is concerned about, or do we need to be paying attention to the alleged abuses that took place? And it sounds like there's some very good proof that they took place by one of his exes and all in that space. But that's what I was going like, wait a minute, vampires and werewolves. And I got another question to ask you, totally out of that realm, but just wondering your thoughts about this whole notion of werewolves and Walker thinking these are important to the people in Georgia.
I mean, the make-believe, but, like I said, nothing surprises me about him because he is a Trump candidate and Trump is supporting him or whatever. So anything that he spews out, it just does not surprise me. He's not, like the sharpest knife in the drawer. He's not, the highest on the totem pole. He's not the smartest fish in the sea or whatever. But, you got to be a lame duck to vote for someone like that. And they purposely put him into Georgia to kind of split that black vote and to get that support. But I don't think he's going to get the black vote. I mean, because everybody knows he's an ass. Everybody knows he's an idiot. Everybody knows he's a yes man. He's I don't even want to call him an Uncle Tom because Uncle Tom was a protector of blacks and black women or whatever. But he's one of those, sellout figures that, he's a yes massa, and that's exactly what a yes massa person looks like. It will be Herschel Walker. If we had to, put it in terms of, a person and what they look like, it would be him. I mean, just the ignorant things that comes out of his mouth or whatever that he spews, you can tell that he's unintelligent and he doesn't know his right foot from his left foot and his right hand from his left hand. And, to put someone like that in office, they know that, he is, the person to, fill that role. If he would win, that all they have to do is just tell him vote for this, vote for that, and it's going to be a yassa massa, and that's just the way it's going to go. So they put another black man against Raphael Warnock to like I said, split the black vote, and the white people are, of course, the Republicans, they're going to vote Republican regardless of if they have a stick figure or if they have a dumbass Herschel Walker, they're still going to vote Republican because at the end of the day, they're trying to advance their agenda and they're trying to keep certain things off the ballot and certain trying to harness control and so we just need to make sure that we're spewing the right messages to the people out in Georgia so that they can get out to vote. We know the lines are long. We know they're making it harder, but we just got to stand there and just push through and put our votes out there. And they're doing things like closing the polls early, no early voting on Saturdays, so they're purposely doing things to discourage people, especially people of color, from voting because they know that people of color vote early and they do it well, and we hit them in the head and hit them where it counts with those early votes. So they're trying to do everything in their power to like shut us down and keep us from voting and things like that. But I think Raphael Warnock is going to persevere and he's going to come out successful, and they're going to send Herschel Walker packing.
I sure hope so and everything. But, one of the things that I know people have been looking for, I know that a lot of people have been hoping to get their check and everything. And apparently California has come up with a figure, and apparently they are actually very serious about getting into reparations. I've also heard that our new person that is going to be in charge of the House has also said that he might want to look at it on a federal level. I think I said on this show, and I said before, I actually had the pleasure of meeting Hakeem Jeffries. So I actually think that he is going to do a great job in that leadership position. But he has said that he is willing to have the conversation around reparations. And I think that even in California, they set a figure and all along those lines. So I was just wondering your thoughts, Dr. Anthony, about the reparations conversation. Is it going in the right direction? Do we need to be having reparations? And just your thoughts in general, because I do know that those are two things that I saw that I'm pretty sure Hakeem Jeffries has said that he's willing to look at it on a national level. And definitely California had some recent news about what they were doing, including even putting a figure out there as to what kind of money they are looking at investing in that cause.
Well, reparations is needed. You know what I'm saying? We gave every minority, group here in America reparations, from the Asians to the Jews to, like other minorities that were not people of color. So, yes, reparations is definitely needed. My thing with reparations is Black people in America should not have to pay for school. That could be one form of reparation. It doesn't have to be in the form of, like monetary and, things like that. But monetary would be good. Black people shouldn't be, held, I should say Black people should automatically get home loans as a part of, like reparations and things like that. Because, people, Wells Fargo and Bank of America, you know, they were basically turning people with great credit down, you know, to refinance and, you know, get home loans. So I think, you know, giving reparations to Black people in that capacity to, you know, secure home ownership is, you know, another form of reparations. So we definitely need reparations, and we definitely needed to come, you know, quick and fast and hurry, because, you know, most people are like, run me my money or whatever. But, you know, I don't think that, you know, Blacks should have to pay, like I said, to go to school. It's just certain. I don't even think that, you know, we should have to pay taxes or whatever. You know, you know, our ancestors and forefathers worked this country for 400 years without a dime. And then when they turned them loose, you know, they still did not give them anything. And then they were discriminated against, and still, you know, had to basically beg for, you know, pennies and up on that, you know, and things like that, and work for in as an indentured servitude, worked as a sharecropper, and they still were cheated out of, you know, many things. And then also, you know, Black towns who were prosperous and had, you know, many Black businesses that were successful were burned out, and Black people property were stolen by white people. So it's a lot of things where, you know, reparations can be given to, you know, people of color, especially African Americans and, you know, Black people. So yeah, I'm all for, you know, like giving the reparations and things like that. So we have to start somewhere. So California is a Democratic state, so I can see that happening over there. In the red states, it'll be hard to, you know, get that through, because, you know, even the poorest of white people, they still vote against their own best interests, and they think that they're better than Blacks, and they think that Blacks are entitled. So I would say that it would be hard to get it done in a red state.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I've got to get ready to check on one of the other things. I might pop off screen just for a second, but I did want to bring up a non-serious issue. Well, actually, it is somewhat serious, but not as serious as some of these other things we're talking about. But I've had some conversations with some friends of mine, including some friends around the network and even friends outside of the network. And I learned something shocking, very shocking. I think you're going to be shocked as well, Dr. Anthony. But, you know, for years, I mean, decades even, I have always thought that I was a Cancer. And, you know, there's that whole line about what sign are you and all along those lines. But apparently the fine folks at NASA have decided that there is a 13th constellation, therefore a 13th sign. So about 86% of us are not what we thought we were, and all in that line. Because as a Cancer, I've been a Cancer all my life. But apparently now I've just found out recently that I'm a Gemini. And apparently there's some people that are like only 1 week of Scorpio, which is what my brother is, and all in that line. So I just wondered your thoughts about that, and whether you are thinking that this is just something that the government got bored with and didn't have anything better to do, so they decided to shift the whole narrative, because we've known that for centuries there have been 12 signs, but apparently now there is a 13th sign, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around that.
Well, I'm gonna let them make it with the 13th sign. I am what I am. I'm a Taurus, and I'm a diehard Taurus, and I was born a Taurus, and I'm gonna always be a Taurus. So they can change whatever they want, you know. And in terms of, you know, people, you believe what you want. And, you know, my sign is a Cancer. I mean, not a Cancer. I'm sorry. My sign is a Taurus, and I'm gonna forever be a Taurus. So I don't care what they changed and, you know, what they're putting out there, and, you know, the new constellations. I'm not buying it. You know, I'm not even, you know, I don't even read it or whatever. I stick to the old stuff. You know, I just think, you know, a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon of this whole, you know, gender thing. And, you know, now they're doing it with the signs, and, you know, everybody's trying to change everything to please everyone. So, you know, with that, you're not going to please everybody. So, you know, to me, it just is what it is or whatever. Like I said, I'm not changing my sign. My birthday is May 5th. I've always been a Taurus. I'm gonna continue to be a Taurus. So whatever NASA wants to do, that's what NASA wants to do. So if you want to change y'all signs, go right ahead, because mine is not changing, and I'm not buying into the, you know, the foolery of, you know, like, oh, you know, my birthday switched and things like that. No, because everything that aligns with me, and, you know, that's what it is. So I'm not switching. I saw that some time ago.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm on that same thing, and all along those lines. You know, you just brought it up earlier, and I'm going to get back to that. And like I said, you have to bounce up just for a hot second to deal with customers here at the Hayti and all in that space. But that being said, I was just wondering your thoughts around the pronouns, because apparently, coming back to Mr. Herschel, you know, he's definitely insane and all of that. He says he doesn't have any idea what a pronoun is, a thing most of us learned roughly in the second grade, and I definitely agree with that. But he was talking about how they're bringing pronouns into the military, and they're bringing wokeness into their military. military, and definitely you have some folks that'll be wondering as to whether they should be, him, her, they, them, she, he, him, she, her, and all along some of the other kind of conversations within the pronoun conversation. So I know that you are a teacher as well. So I just wanted, if that's a conversation that you've been hearing your teachers, students bring up as something that they even pay attention to, or did they just say that that's a Billy and that's a Sally or whatever, or did they get into this whole conversation around the pronouns?
I've never had a child actually get into the whole conversation around the pronouns. They have pretty much been respectful in terms of what we discuss. I use their first name, so there's not a problem there. If they want me to say that, I don't have a problem with saying it. But like I said, it's not an issue for me or my students, but I know some people have experienced some, difficulty with the pronouns and the LGBTQ community. So my thing is, it doesn't matter what your sexuality is, as long as you're working and you're doing what you're supposed to do.
I'm serious.
I don't have an issue with that. It has no bearing on, how I educate you, how you learn from me. That is irrelevant to me. Your sexuality, it doesn't weigh anywhere, So I try to be respectful. I try to, put the children in an environment that is conducive to their learning, to make them feel comfortable, to make them feel safe. But the sexuality thing, it never comes up with me. I never bring it up. I never discuss it with children. So like I said, I just try to make them feel comfortable and in a space where they want to work and they're safe. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Speaking of which, I know you also do a lot of work in the STEM field and in the science field and the technology field. And I was just wondering, do you think that we are doing enough? Because I had this conversation with some friends of mine, and they're basically like, there's enough minorities in those fields. We don't need to have more, or it's a level playing field, which I think is total BS and all that. But as one that teaches in that field, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I think that is definitely a field that we need to have more voices at and all in that space. It's actually had the pleasure Saturday, because we're doing an art intensive here at Hayti, and one of the gentlemen was actually running around and showing the kids how to operate little small robots. And I do know that robotics is a real thing as well. And I wish that more kids knew about robots, but I'd love to hear your thoughts as to technology and whether that's something that you're seeing enough of our community actually having an interest in, or is it also sometimes that we don't know about these fields and therefore we're not in them as strongly because we don't have the access to those fields also. But I definitely think that there should be more scientists, more folks in computer science, more folks in even veterinarian sciences and other technology kind of fields, including some of the things that are going on in robotics. But I'm not as much in there as you're in that area of the country that you are, where some of that is more prevalent than others. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about how we're doing in the space of teaching kids in general, but specifically our kids about these important kind of fields.
Well, our kids are kind of limited when it comes to technology. So I would say we always need, people of color in these fields, especially in the math, the sciences, and the arts. And a lot of kids are afraid of the math when it comes to, doing like technology and advanced mathematics. So they shy away from technical fields. They shy away from the sciences. They shy away from mathematics because of the fear of math. And so I would say that we definitely need to push our young people to become more inclined when it comes to robotics, when it comes to STEAM, when it comes to STEM, when it comes to sciences, when it comes to mathematics, when it comes to all of those fields, because we need them there. They are our future. And, Black people understand Black people issues and Black people understand Black people needs. So if we don't have representation in these fields, we don't have people that can understand where we're coming from in terms of, for example, medicine. So we know that there are health disparities within the medical field. And if there are no Black doctors, not saying that they're not, but just using it as an example, then other doctors don't really understand Black issues and they don't really understand Black needs. So we have to push our children to learn these things in order to better themselves, in order to become more inclined with the careers that are shortfall when it comes to children of color and when it comes to women of color. So yes, we definitely need to push our children to become more inclined with the robotics, more inclined with STEM, more inclined with technology, more inclined with science, more inclined with mathematics, because our children shy away from it. For example, I was going over basic statistics with my students. And so they were like, we can't do this. And I'm like, it's just basic math. So just going through the steps of showing them how to do it, it was kind of difficult because they had already put up a wall and they blocked it, put up a fence and saying that they couldn't learn the math because they were afraid. So we have to push our children to think beyond what they see and beyond the fear of getting into math and beyond the fear of getting things wrong. Part of the thing that I do in my course is we have design briefs and we talk about different forms of technology, different forms of theories, different forms of correcting the problem, and different forms of, working through the problem. So, for example, when the building in Miami collapsed, it was structural engineers that had to go through and make sure that that building was correct. So we use that as an example, as a way to look at theory and design in order to figure out how we could have best served in that capacity. So just getting the children to think and look beyond, what they see and stop being afraid of math and science. So yeah, we definitely need our kids in those fields.
No, I definitely agree with that. I was just curious, do you think that enough of us know about the things that we have been involved in that field? Because I know that I just recently found out about our involvement, like it was things that, well, I knew about our involvement with the stoplight, but definitely even things that are in the computer field and the computer space. And I don't know that we always know that information. I'd love to hear your thoughts as to whether you think we're doing enough in that lane as well.
Well, as far as, teaching our history, we can't rely on the public schools to teach our children our history. We have to rely on the parents because the parents are the very first teacher of the child. So we have to rely on you guys to teach the children what they need to know in terms of Black history, getting them prepared for school, getting them prepared for the world, because the school and the educational system is just not going to do it. So as a parent, you guys have to step up and you have to move in the right direction in order to get your child prepared. You just can't rely solely on the educational system, because the educational system is not going to adequately prepare your child for everything that you want them to know. You have to step up and you have to be that parent and you have to guide them and you have to give them that insight into how Black people were instrumental in building this country and how Black people were instrumental in, building the use of electricity, the use of computers. So they're not going to get all that stuff from the educational system, because the Black history that is taught in educational system is primarily centered around Martin, Rosa, and Harriet Tubman. It doesn't go in depth into the African-American history that we need them to go into. So no, the children will not get that form of history from the educational sector. We have to rely solely on the parents and what the children are exposed to outside of education in order for them to, get that particular knowledge. So no, they're not exposed enough to inventors and, Black inventors. So no, we have to do better when it comes to educating our children around that.
No, definitely agree with you on that. Hey, Dr. Anthony, one of the things that I was curious about is I've had some friends from other countries that are quick to point out how much we don't need to have the quote unquote victim mentality. And sometimes I'm thinking to myself that they sometimes have that same mentality that they say that we have, and all along those lines. And then the other thing is that I wonder about this whole notion of allyship and whether we should actually be more concerned about or as concerned about what's going on in their communities as we are in our own communities. Because I know that there are definitely some folks in the Hispanic community, in the Indian communities, and in a number of other communities that will quickly say, yeah, we understand your issues. We understand what you're going through, but our issues are just as valid as what y'all are going through. And y'all need to help us just like we help y'all. And sometimes I don't think that is a fair conversation, but I'd love to hear your take on it and what you think about allyship and working with other ethnicities.
No, and no. For the simple reason is they have already come over here and they have already gained everything that they needed to gain from us, from the civil rights movement. If they wanted to be an ally, they would be an ally. If they wanted to do that, they would have done that. You know, when we were out there marching for Black Lives Matter, when we were out there marching for Philando Castile and all the other ones that were gunned down, they would have been right there if they wanted to be an ally. So no, and no. So we need to put forth, you know, efforts, what we are going to do in our community with our leaders and things like that. As far as, you know, the other ones, they can kick rocks for right now because I'm not saying that their concerns are not valid, but at the same time, they have already benefited from our movement in the civil rights movement. So I don't see myself, you know, being an ally or, you know, doing anything other than what I'm doing to, you know, promote Black power, Black unity, Black love, Black success. And once we get that under control, then we maybe can move over to, you know, helping someone else in building, you know, relationships and things like that. But other than that, no, I'm not with it, because they come up. Okay, for example, a lot of people don't know this, but when foreigners come here into this country, the government gives them money. They give them a loan to start businesses and to do things that is denied to Black people. So my thing is, when you're in our communities, how much of your proceeds are you giving back to the Black community that supports your store? So if you really wanted to ally and partner with us, you would support Black businesses, you would support the Black community, and you would do other things. So, you know, like I said, when I was on the other show, everybody is always talking about, you know, what they want to do when it comes to, you know, being friends and things like that with the Black community, until it's time to step up and be friends with the Black community. When you go to the vote, to the polls, most of them vote Republican, and most of them vote against our best interest. So how can you sit in one capacity and say that you want to build allyship with us, and then your voting record shows something totally different? And like I said, they have businesses in the Black community. How many times have they given to a Black school? How many times have they given to a Black nonprofit? Probably none. And so I don't see us moving in that direction in the near future. Maybe later on in the future, but not in the immediate future.
No, that makes a lot of sense. You know, I've had some friends of mine that have also said that a Black Wall Street is not a realistic thing, that it used to be realistic back in the day.
You know,
but I'm just saying, do you think that the modern day version can happen as well? Because I actually think that we can create physical Black Wall Streets, and they can also be spread out and in different spaces. But I do know that there are some people that will tell you that that was a real thing back in the day, and that the situations and conditions were much different, and therefore it can happen in the same way. And I do think that modern technology may change the way, but I personally think that we can have Black Wall Streets and the kind of model, because I actually personally think that that's literally what the Indians and some other folks have done, is they've created their own versions of Black Wall Street. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about those insulated communities and all in that space. But they will quickly tell us that we can't do it in the modern day era. But I'd love to hear your thoughts.
It can be done. It can be done. So I think we're headed in the right direction, because we already have people that are working on creating Black Wall Street and building up the Black businesses and building up the support for the Black businesses. So we have websites that are out there. We have Black banks. We have Black credit unions. So all we have to do now is educate the people on the Black banks, the Black Wall Street, building up, you know, the support for Black businesses, and getting this knowledge out to our community, so that we can support our community in that way and support Black businesses in that way. That's the only way that we are going to move forward and get ahead. Because when we had Black businesses and when we had Black Wall Street, we were unstoppable, and they knew that we were unstoppable. So they bombed actually Philadelphia, and bombed that particular area to disenfranchise the Black people of that community. And not only that, there were the Tulsa riots when they burned Tulsa and burned the Black Wall Street. So I think we are moving in the right direction. And I think what's going to actually help us move forward in that direction more is the metaverse, and getting everybody into the metaverse.
Yep, definitely agree with that, and definitely got to get more people involved in that whole space and everything. I was just wondering your thoughts around I had another interesting conversation I think you'll find interesting as well. I had some friends of mine that swear up and down that we don't have political prisoners in the United States. I'm going like, no, we've got them. They're actually belonging to different groups. There are Black Panthers that are in prisons. There are members of AIM that are in prison. There are members, you just mentioned Philadelphia, of MOVE that are in prison. There are a number of other folks that are in prison for political reasons and all in that space. But I don't think that folks in America, even the rest of the world, have this understanding that there are actually political prisoners in the United States. Nothing against Brittany Griner, because she's definitely a political prisoner there in Russia, but we've got our own versions of that happening in the U.S. But I was just wondering your take on that, and if you agree with me that it's something that needs to probably be addressed more than it is. I mean, some people might even argue that half the folks that are in prison are political prisoners because the prison system is jacked up and needs to be reformed in the first place. But I just wondering, your thought is one that teaches our nation's youth and all of that. And I know that's a conversation that even the young people think about.
Well, I mean, yes, there are political prisoners, and we do still have Black Panthers that are in prison in other political groups. But like I said on the other show, Black people are the only race of people that cannot support their own. We have to love everybody else, but we can't love ourselves. So when we start loving ourselves and moving in the right direction to loving ourselves, then we get labeled anti-Semitic and other things. We get labeled as extremists. We get labeled as this. J. Edgar Hoover had a whole unit around Black people. So when they termed Black people extremists and things like that, then they went into the Black community and arrested these people just off of GP because they really didn't have anything else. It was fabricated. It was made up laws like they did with the Black codes with made up laws. Oh, you can't stand outside at night. You can't do this. You can't walk on the railroad. So in order to funnel the prison system, which is another form of slavery, they had to come up with fabricated charges to supply those white people who own those private prisons with bodies so that they could generate money and they can generate wealth. So yes, there are people who are still incarcerated that are political prisoners, but the main people who are incarcerated are Black people. And Black people are still being incarcerated and censored and shut down when they speak out. For example, Kyrie Irving, when he spoke out, when he tweeted the movie, and all the movie was saying was basically telling Black people where their origins are and where they come from, and it said nothing really about the Jewish community, but he was termed a hater basically against the Jewish community, and he was censored and he was shut down for 5 NBA games he could not play. But I'm glad he stood on his word and stood against what they were saying, and he stood with what his belief system is and what he wants from his people and the understanding of his understanding of where he's coming from. So these these Jews who think that Black people are anti-Semitic and that are against them, they need to kick rocks because nobody is against you. All we're saying is that we love ourselves and we love our community and we love our people. And that's where we're going. And like I said, at the end of the day, I'm a Black woman. So I'm going to love my community. I'm going to love my people, and I'm going to love my constituents. But you can kick rocks. I don't vibe in your community. You don't vibe in mine. So I'm not going to put you in yours before I put me in mine. So at the end of the day, like I said, I'm a Black woman and I support Black people.
Definitely. And then I know another area that a lot of people are talking about being supportive, and you actually alluded to it earlier. And I'm going to bring up another great friend of mine as well, because definitely tech is an area that we are not dealing enough and having this conversation and all in that space. So I'd love to hear what Nicole's got to say about this, because she is definitely in the tech space and all in those lines and everything. So love to hear some of your thoughts about what you're hearing Dr. Anthony say, and y'all share a little bit of that New Orleans belief system and all of that, and I'll just leave it at that in that space. But definitely love to hear some of your thoughts as to what's been said. And then I was actually going to ask just Dr. Anthony, and you may have some thoughts around it as well about this notion, because I've had some friends that are going like, code switching doesn't need to happen. It's not a real thing. And I'm like, it's a real thing.
You know what? I'm on fire, like backstage. Y'all are having a great conversation up here. I'm so excited. This is where I kind of sit. I am the CEO of Black Multiverse Enterprises, amongst some other things, but I am also the founder of the Blackverse Metaverse community. And both of those two initiatives have a goal of educating, training, and disrupting, so that we have some space, so that the future is not like our present, right? You know, we have all these things that we grapple with on a day-to-day basis, and people don't understand that because we don't talk about it. It's stuff that we're used to because that's life for us. But you know, we hear other people talking about things. Well, yo, I just pulled out my yacht, or yo, you know, I'm looking at this $500,000 loan, or oh, I raised $2.5 million in funding with just the click of my pinky, and it's like, I was trying to get up yesterday, and you know, I've got some issues with paying off, you know, this little thing over here and that little thing over there. And it's like our communities get it's not a tax, but it's a life tax, because things are we end up paying additional because we don't have the funding to get stuff done. You talk about technology, you talk about algorithms and the way that things have changed up. A few weeks ago, back in, I want to say it was October, we had a bunch of us business owners were sitting around and we were talking about SEO, so search engine optimization. And we were looking through Google Trends, and we found that on Google, 0%, and that is unheard of, 0% have searched for the term how to grow a Black business. And when you think about that from like both points of view, so whether you're a Black business searching for things, or you're searching for, or you know, you're searching for Black businesses to provide things too, no one is searching for how to grow a Black business. And so it has never, in all of the entirety of the internet, amounted to 1%. That's huge when it comes to our communities. And when we think about stuff like that, that's the problem. Right? Like that is the problem, and it's core. We can't have that in the future. That is what the metaverse is for. We are trying to tell as many people right now as possible about the metaverse and the possibilities that are there for not only us as individuals, but for our businesses as well. We can get to a different space. We can utilize the blockchain and some of this technology that is out here, like NFTs, to change the game on certain things. And so that's what I'm excited about. You know, y'all are talking about quite a lot of different wonderful topics, and I'm happy to just tap in, and thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, what is your thoughts? Because I brought up the notion, because I have had that conversation with friends who have talked to me about, and it does exist in the technology field, it exists in the media field, it exists in a number of others. But when you tell them about code switching, it's almost like colorism. They don't think that it is an actual thing, even though we both know that it's a real thing, and it is really part of our survival tactics and all of that. But I was just wondering your thoughts around that and how we can actually get people to understand that it is a reality, and they need to understand that it's a reality and stop pretending like it's not a reality.
No, it is a reality. We have to code switch around them because we have to make them feel comfortable, because the second that they feel uncomfortable with us, especially for Black women and women of color, we get termed angry Black women. We can't be passionate. We have to be angry all the time. We have to be combative. We have to be, you know, in a sense of fighting for whatever we want to say. We can't just be passionate, but in the same sense, if they do the same thing, oh, they're passionate, they're warm, they're caring. But Black women is always termed as the fighter. She's hard. She can't be the same thing as the white woman. We always have to be the harder version of the white woman. So in sense of code switching, Black women always have to code switch, because it's those small microaggressions that white women put on Black women. For example, I was in a group chat with one of the colleagues in the school district that I work for. So we were going back and forth about a topic or whatever. And so she basically said, oh, you're being hostile and you're being combative. And me being the Dr. Anthony that I am, I said, look here, bro, let me tell you one thing. If I was being hostile and combative, I would have had you crying a long time ago. So they automatically term us those things, even when we're having generalized conversations. That's their go-to words, and that's how they perceive Black women, even when we are just not being passionate or, you know, heightening in our voice or raising our voice or, you know, showing body language or anything like that. That's their go-to language when it comes to us. Nicole?
Yeah. I totally agree. We see this as Black women, not only from being Black women, but from being women. So first and foremost, just being women, right? So when we're women, especially in tech, your voice is drowned out in the fight. Like you have ideas and contributions. Not only do they get stolen by men, they also get stolen by white women. So we're seeing it, from all different avenues. And it's like, right, if you do show up and you have a powerful voice, or I had this one woman back in my 20s. We used to get together and just laugh, girl talk, what they call water cooler talk. Like we would just have cool little conversations for about 5 minutes during break or whatever. Oh, you're cackling over there, why are you cackling? Somebody would tell me I was cackling now. Like that is just not, I was younger then. And I wasn't as comfortable in my own skin, but I wish somebody would tell me that now, because that is a microaggression. Like, don't make me small because you don't feel comfortable. Like I should not have to be that way. It should be okay for me to be who I am. I might laugh. We might laugh a little louder than you. And yeah, maybe it gets a little loud on this end of the thing, but join the party. That shouldn't be a problem. I agree wholeheartedly. We got issues and they need to be discussed and put on the table.
No, they don't need to join the party. They don't need to join the party. They need to stay wherever they are, because we need to have safe spaces where we can talk and we can talk freely amongst ourselves. Because the second that they join the party, they take things to a whole different level. They start to say that they don't feel comfortable. They don't like the way we talk to each other. They don't understand the lingo. So no, you stay over there. We got this over here. You stay over there. We need our own safe spaces, and we need to have communities where we can talk amongst ourselves without them. And they have to understand that everything is not for them and everything is not about them. So when we as Black women, when we gather and we're cackling, as they say, that's what we do as Black women, because we understand each other and we're engaging each other, and we're understanding that comfort, and we have that level of comfort with each other where we can do that. And the second that they're around, everything changes. So let them stay over there.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'd love to hear both of your thoughts around this, because I've got a dear friend of mine here in Durham and everything. She's part of that LGBTQIA community and all in that space. I've actually been trying to get her to come on one of our podcasts at some point or another. But Alexis Pauline Gumbs is definitely, and I've heard you say that you don't identify this way. Actually, you've actually been very adamant in a couple of shows around the notion of feminism, Dr. Anthony. But I was just wondering, because she does consider herself a Black feminist, whether you think that is something that we need to even be concerned about. Because I've heard both sides of the conversation. I've heard some that have been like, wanting to have the conversation of being both the sister and the feminist, and then I've heard others like yourself that have been like, no, let's make it very clear. Don't fall in with that whole feminist crowd and everything in that nature. So I'm just wondering your take on that. Because like I said, I do know that Alexis, that's part of her identity along with her other half. And like I said, I have invited them to come on the online dinner party and other things. And they were doing that whole traveling things where they're speaking on the speaking tour. So that is loosening it up to some degree. And so there is a possibility that they may come on in 2023, because I recently ran into them like maybe about a month and a half ago.
Well, I mean, I don't like you said, I don't consider myself a feminist, and I just don't support some of those causes that they are down with. I mean, because it shows at the ballot box. You say that you're down with women. You say that you're down with women of color. You say that you're down with everything that we're going through, but that's a lie. Because the ballot box shows something totally different. It shows that you support the white supremacy. It shows that you support the white privilege, and you vote against your own best interest, and you leave the Black women hanging. And I mean, the Black women always show up and show out at the polls, as we always do, to represent. But the white women, they are in a whole different class, and it shows in the voting. And one of the guests, I forget her name, Linda. So she was like, oh, the white women and some white people and people, other nationalities, they were out there, marching with Black Lives Matter. Okay, so they show face. But what really matters is when you get to that ballot box, and the ballot box says something totally different from what that march stated. Because if everybody that was out there at those marches voted the way that they should have voted, we wouldn't have certain people in office, and we could have passed certain laws. So no, I'm not really down with that. No, not at all.
It's interesting. Like I said, I've definitely had some interesting conversations with some sisters in that space, and there are quite a few here in Durham, and I don't know why that is and everything, probably because of the political nature of Durham that have fall into that conversation. Is also a part of the history, because I do know that Pauline Murray, who is a historical figure, actually helped write some of that first Brown versus Board education decisions, and actually was working with Thurgood Marshall, was actually in that community, even though some people say that she identified in that community, some people say that she did not. And since she's passed and isn't here to answer for herself, so it'll be just a conjecturary theory as to whether she was in that part of the society or not. But I do know that that has been even a dialogue that was going on even within the African-American male community, because I do know a lot of people also wonder about Maynard Rustin and some of his roles in the civil rights struggle, and also identifying with that other community as well. But it's interesting just some of the ways, because in my mind, that is also a divide and conquer tactic, because they sometimes get us to pit each other against each other, and sometimes they even do that through the church and things along those lines. But that's just some of my thoughts. I don't know whether either you or Nicole have any insight into that kind of conversation and where I was going in that direction, but would love to hear your thoughts.
Well, back in the day, if we look at it from a historical point, they always said that Jesse Jackson had a hand in getting Martin Luther King killed. So you have to also look at, the Black Panthers and how they were brought down by Black people, how Malcolm X was assassinated because of the help of Black people. So, yes, they do have, plants and things like that. When I mean plants, just people that look the part, but are not really the part. So it's been happening for such a long time, in different capacities or whatever. So, I mean, I'm not surprised that it's not, continuing to happen, and it's still happening now. But I want to change the subject a little bit before we.
I know we got to wrap up, and I was actually going to change the subject. I'm actually going to, and hopefully Nicole can help me with the wrap, because there's another show that's going on, and I got to get to Maxine and all of that space. So I'm actually going to bounce out, but definitely I'm going to leave the two of y'all, because I know I'm leaving it in very capable hands and all of that and everything. But I will be back, because we got another show that'll be starting in about 10 minutes with Maxine Pearl McCoy, and she'll probably be talking about education as well. So I'm going to leave it in the hands of two incredibly capable ladies, and definitely get on out of here. And know that intro, we've been working on that. So just the 30-second clock or one of those ads will work perfectly fine in that space and everything. But I'm going to get out of here and let y'all have a conversation around technology, and I'm going to bounce. And
not technology. I want to talk about Deion Sanders. All right. So before we go into technology, so Deion is at Jackson State University in Mississippi. So it's been trending in the news that he's leaving Jackson State and he's going to a PWI, predominantly white institution. And so I have mixed feelings about him leaving Jackson State and going to a PWI, because a lot of his recruits went there because of him. So my thing is, what happens to the children who transfer to that university because of you? So you just leave them high and dry, so you're not going to support them throughout the other 3 years of their career. So I'm like really grappling with this, because I understand that, coaches leave a place, but I just feel like he should have at least stayed a few years more, instead of just bouncing out on the first train smoking. What are your thoughts?
I am not the one for sports, but this actually does kind of fall in a space I kind of love, because the SWAC is there, and then also Colorado, because I'm from Colorado. So I think that it's hard, right? Because like you said, the kids, the adults have followed him there, and they, all have maybe some budding careers that are happening there, or even folks who had plans to come there because he was there. So that's definitely an issue. But then we also have to remember that he also has his own ambitions. And so how do we make space to allow us to continue to rise, while also caring for the people in the culture? So I don't know if there's a right answer. I haven't researched it enough to truly have a comment on that. But I do know that, everything has a time and a season. And so if we can find a way to to, you know, kind of transition and do it successfully, one of those kids, one of those previous kids, one of those, his departure, basically what I'm saying is his departure has made space for someone else to step in. And so that someone else is also has the potential, just like he did, to be a light to someone else. And so there's going to be a whole different connection to the kids, maybe not from a sports avenue, but from an education and training aspect of it, that someone else is going to be able to be a light to them as well. So whoever it is, we just need to make sure that they have the best interests of those students at heart, and that they really want to see the SWAC survive and thrive. So I think that that's what's really important about it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but you know, at the same time, like I said, I'm grappling with this. It's kind of hard for me because he did put Jackson State on the map. He did put black athletics on the map. But in terms of the children itself, I was in a Facebook chat with someone, and they were like, Dion did the right thing. He made moves to go somewhere else and, you know, make more money. But who's the victim? And I was like, the children are the victim, because at the end of the day, a lot of those children went there for him. He was that fathership that many of them didn't have. He was that leadership that they needed. He was that solace that many of those young men needed. And he spoke life into these boys. So I just feel I'm saddened that he's leaving the children. I'm happy that he got, you know, another opportunity, but in terms of the children itself and what they need in terms of guidance. And like you said, I hope the next person that comes in is able to fill those shoes and able to bring what he brought to the table, because I just don't want to see those children falter and go by the wayside because he's not there, because he gave them something to believe in. He gave them a world outside of the sports, and put them in a place where they were successful. And he showed them how to be a young man. He showed them how to be a leader. So yes, you can get somebody to fill that spot, but in terms of, you know, what he was giving to the children, will they be able to deliver that to the children and still, you know, run a successful sports program? So that's my issue with it. I just want the kids to be okay. I want them to receive that guidance that he was bringing, that light that he showed to them, that love that he was pouring into them. I just want them to be able to withstand and get that same type of energy from the next person, because, you know, you never know what you're going to get when it comes to sports and leadership and, you know, things of that nature. So,
you know, it brings up something else too, though, because now, you know, I don't know. There's some folks, because I got some friends from Jackson, but to now see him move from Jackson and then go over to Colorado, that's a bridge that's been created, because it's not like he's going to lose his contacts. It's not he's going to lose his influence. This negativity is definitely going to be there for a while. But now he has the ability to say, hey, y'all, this university also exists. And so for those of you who maybe aren't looking at HBCUs in the first place, this is also another avenue for you to come here. There are other schools out there, and you can actually make that leap. Because sometimes when we grow up in college cities and college states, we're surrounded by things, and that's all we know. But when we can see somebody who can actually make the leap and kind of get out, so they say, like, you see that actually happen, you now have been exposed to something that maybe wouldn't have been exposed to before. So I think that some good's gonna come from it. I don't know if all of that, like, that could also be bad, right? So we want our kids in our HBCUs. We want them to continue the legacy and continue the heritage and things, the culture of being inside of the HBCUs and growing up HBCU. But also, you know, we're finding that people aren't resonating with that as much, especially this next generation. Like, you know, when we're talking about being Black, like, they're not resonating with that in the same way that, at least as my generation did, as the generation before me did, because they are not having to deal with the issues that we did when we were younger. Like it was necessary for us to group up and things like that. Diversity has come in. Now it's kind of washed a whole lot of stuff. And so now the name of the game is inclusion and diversity, and we have to be in all these groups that are, you know, kind of multifaceted with all sorts of different flavors in there. And that's not bad, but we still need our spaces. I totally agree with what you said earlier. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see which way that goes. I think that Deion has the ability to bring it out and to bring people up with him. He not only has the ability, but he has the money. So that can actually take place. So hopefully he's thinking about that and thinking about those kids as well.
Yeah, I hope so. Because it just, you know, to me, it's just not sitting right. And I mean, who am I to say, you know, not, you know, go for your dreams and aspirations. But at the same time, when you have put something in terms of when you're pouring into children, how can you just not continue to pour into those children and just walk away? So I'm just looking at it from a standpoint of, you know, like mental and holistic when it comes to the child, because Black children are relational and they do things based off the relationship they have with the person. So he brought a different perspective. He gave them a good relationship. He gave them directives. He gave them expectations. He gave them all of this, and they performed, and they showed him by performing. So I just don't want them to be caught up in, you know, different coaches and different things where their feelings go by the wayside, and what he was bringing out of them is basically ignored or not acknowledged in a way that he has done it in the past. So it's just, I like I said, I'm still grappling with the whole him leaving them just high and dry, because I know the number one recruit went there because of him. So, you know, my thing is, what are you going to say to the players, you know, who's there because of you, and who potentially will be there because you put this program on the map and you elevated the program and things like that. So yeah, I still feel some type of way about it, but like I said, you know, who am I to say that you can't, you know, further your dreams and, you know, expand your monetization of your salary and your career. It's just you know, it's like a double-edged sword. It's like which way the pendulum will swing, you know. It's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So
man, it'll be interesting for sure.
It definitely will. So yeah, so so I'm gonna follow the story, and hopefully we can get some more insight into Deion and what he's going to do in the program at Jackson State, how they're going to move in terms of the students and what they're bringing to the table to get the next coach to fill his shoes, because that person has some big shoes to fill, and they need to be able to bring the thunder and, you know, put that heart into those kids, because that's what he did. He gave them expectations, and they put the heart in the sport, and it showed off with a perfect season.
Yeah.
So,
well, they better keep it up. Perfect season. You can't let that go. It's time.
I hope they don't. Yeah, but I want to thank you for coming on. So I want to, you know, get more in tune with you in the metaverse. So we'll definitely have you back on the show so we can talk to the people about supporting and investing into the NFTs and more so in the metaverse, and how can they invest their money to make money, and where they need to start in order to do the NFTs and the Bitcoin and all of that great stuff. So
definitely got some resources for that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to 2023. We're gonna have you over on the MetaMind Shift show for sure. And I'm definitely looking forward to coming back as well. Thank you for having me.
Sounds great. So is he gonna come back and get us out? You got it. All right. Yep. So thank you guys for watching another great episode of the All Around. I will see you Monday. Make sure you click like and share, and deuces.
Bye, y'all.
You know how people love to enjoy food and don't understand how to flavor their food? or how to replicate a meal? They're interested in supplements, but don't know where to begin? Well, what I do is I take the guesswork out of enjoying flavor and wellness with my flavorful spice blends, so that they can create delicious meals with healing benefits. Can Do Spice was created to help cooks at any level enjoy healing through food. Every spice blend was designed to give added health benefits of natural herbs. Every blend is complete. There's no need to add any additional spice for a delicious meal. Saving you time and money while adding supplements to your meals can be both tasty and fun. My earliest memories in the kitchen began with my father, Kenny Can Do Bond, so it was fitting that I would name this line